Second.
Ah,
It's live.
it's live.
That's my intro, is me going like this. Yeah, internet.
Woo.
And I don't want to jinx it, knock on wood. As soon as I say internet, woo, the internet will die or something. But so I hope it's a surprise to anyone who is popping in watching that Mike Barron is joining us. We got Mike Barron here. For as long as you like Mike, don't feel like you have to stay for the whole stream. But we all read Nexus issues 1 and 2 of the Color series, and we'll get into that because there's some black and white ones arc before that too that we only read a few pages. I only read a few pages of. But yeah, we got it off Comixology, read it. We wanted to talk about it. We wanted to do Jason wanted to do a show and got Abra on board where we can read some of these classic comics and go over it, kind of like comics kayfabe, but less like soy and less whatever.
and also when we promote our books, they're cool and the artwork's good. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Cool. And so I have one thing to get things started. Let me show you guys my screen. This is a little bit of a segue, a little separate thing, but I saw this tweet that, there's this writer's strike going on. It's good. We got Mike Barron for this too.
Hasn't affected me, but yeah, I heard about it.
Yeah. So this tweet says, Taylor Sheridan says he might quit TV if WGA writer's strike compels studios to staff shows with a minimum number of writers, which is one of their demands, I guess, is like writer's room. They want to, like, you have to staff it with like 12 or even 16 writers or something, where you can't run a show with like 4 genius writers writing the show. You got to get 16, and because they want jobs or whatever, and they want them to be diverse and stuff.
So
and
much for meritocracy.
Start
the show.
What's that again?
Let's go live.
Yeah, we are.
We're live now?
Yeah, we're live.
That's Narwhal's opening. Just like, we're live.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah. So, Mike, have you seen any Taylor Sheridan, any of his TV shows?
Well, yeah, I have Sicario, which I think is a brilliant movie, and I've seen the first 5 seasons of Yellowstone.
Yeah.
So you can imagine it's like, him and a close-knit team of people he trusts. They want to flood it. But what was interesting was the comments. So he got a lot of crap, and I just know this is one of those issues that if you talk about the writer's strike negatively, a bunch of activists are going to hate you immediately, which makes you kind of feel like you're on the right track, kind of.
Activists.
A lot
activists.
of them are like, and they're not writers really or whatever. So a lot of them are like, bye. You just know they just want to make friends or whatever. They don't even care about art.
Activists are people with luxury problems.
They've had it too easy.
Frivolous problems created by people who don't have to worry about their next meal or their paycheck. So they're thinking of new ways to pump themselves up and look virtuous to the world. It's all part of the virtue signal. And so they become activists, like people who throw paint on Chagall paintings.
Oh, God.
Yeah. That's it.
Get a firing squad.
Or climate activists who block traffic.
Yeah. When they
people who have to work
to
for a living
or whatever. If AI ends up like replacing a lot of jobs and we all get universal basic income, you just know there's going to be even more
drama.
These people just like
creative people.
So we have to get the oil protesters to attack the Jackson Pollocks and the de Kooning paintings.
Yeah, because then you won't tell the difference.
Yeah.
It's interesting you brought up this article, Narwhal, because did you hear today about they posted an interview on Twitter with the CEO of that submarine that is missing. They went and the guy was like, well, we wanted to hire people that were diverse and exciting. And we don't want just the standard 50-year-old men. And I'm like, how's that working out for you? You don't have experienced people that are in the know that know what to do in an emergency. They're just like, but we look good. We're drowning, but we look good,
Yeah, I know. That's
Math.
utterly ridiculous. It gets me
Math
paranoid. It's like, shit, I got to watch out. I don't want to go under a bridge that was built under.
Yeah. Well, she tried.
Math and physics don't care about your skin color, and they're ruthless and they're cruel. and
Yep.
that's the way of the world. But
Yeah,
unfortunately,
there's a scene like that in Private American too, where they're like assemble a team, and she's like, "Any Caucasians?" And they're like, "You may have one Caucasian."
Oh God.
Which that book's awesome, by the way. Private American. It's not the main focus, but we can touch on that a little bit today too. But that's a great book, Mike. Thanks for
Thank you.
getting it out there. And I know I read the last letter too. Is really well written, and it kind of goes through. It's Mike's letter to the fans, kind of. But there's a lot of crap that the team went through on this book, just because putting out this book in this time, even though this isn't a political book, other than kind of telling the truth, kind of, then that
Well,
makes
it came about because I asked myself what the Punisher would be doing if I were writing him. And it seemed obvious that he would be down on the southern border, trying to stop the flood of human traffickers, drug runners, and terrorists. They're just
Fentanyl.
pouring across our unprotected border. And the fact that this is controversial blows my mind. It just shows how deteriorated the public converse has become under the control of lifelong grifters and parasites who've never worked for a day in their lives.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
infuriating.
yeah, you would do that with the Punisher, Mike, and when as I was reading Private American, for those that they have affinity for that 80s Punisher run of yours, it's not apples to apples, but the spirit is there, and the pace of the dialogue and the characterization and some of the jams he gets in and out of it totally read like a Punisher, and thank you for that. And I know your next book is a Western. Do you want to
Bronze
talk
Star.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Wait, can you bring that up, Narwhal?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And it's
the
on
video-
Fun My Comic, right? Or
It is on Fund My Comic. This is going to blow people's mind because Pat Broderick is one of the most popular artists who ever worked for Warner Brothers for DC. He drew Firestorm, Micronauts, many other titles, and this is the greatest work of his career.
yeah,
You
I've seen
getting it
some
there,
sample
buddy?
pages, and he's just lavishing it with attention and detail. It just
It's
looks fantastic.
unbelievable. The art is so magnificent. We're going to offer an oversized black and white book like we did with Thin Blue Line.
Very nice.
Is this one live now, or is it launching soon?
It is live now. I think you got the. Oh, there it is. There it is.
Yeah, awesome.
Did you watch the trailer?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me share with audio then. 1 second.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the trailer. I love the sound effects in there. I try to incorporate sound effects in my reviews and everything because I think that really makes a difference. And yeah, the guy that did your trailer here, it's awesome.
Chris did the trailer.
Yeah, really good.
Nice. We got 20 people watching, by the way. Everyone, thanks for being here. We got special guest Mike Barron. Kind of this new show. We're going to go over some classic Nexus comics too, which is fun. I'm going to play this trailer for Mike's new book, though.
The Civil War was America's bloodiest.
Oh, is my internet slow to do it? With
The
my,
Ring of Hope.
yeah, one second. We might just encourage people to watch it on their end. But I just heard the guy's voice there for a second.
I did too.
Over 500,000 died to preserve national unity. When the war ended, Confederates like Harley Brogdon headed west, shooting game for the army and gambling. When a card game turns deadly, Harley shoots in self-defense, killing the card sharp who threw down first. Wilfred Knorr, the card sharp's wealthy father, will stop at nothing to see Harley hang. Harley flees to Cobb's Gap, an old silver mining town at the foot of the Rockies. A remarkably peaceful town, especially after dark. But the sheriff harbors a dark secret, and no one dares go into the mines. Cobb's Gap is full of secrets. People speak in hushed tones of something in the mine. Something worse than their cursed sheriff. Something even the Indians fear. Tired of running, Harley falls in love with a local widow with secrets of her own. But when Knorr's posse arrives seeking vengeance, the stage is set for a showdown with unimaginable horrors from the deepest pits of hell. And every secret will be exposed.
Oh,
Eisner
sweet.
winner Mike Barron and acclaimed illustrator Pat Broderick present one of the weirdest westerns that Comic Dom has ever seen. Bronze Star, a thrilling tale of love, revenge, and supernatural terror from the minds of two legendary creators. It's not the monster you're looking for. Order your copy at BronzeStarComic.com.
Amazing. I'm glad the internet started working. That's cool.
So one of the wonderful things about this new crowdfunding era is that creators like Pat, creators like Graham Nolan, and Aaron Lepresti, these mainstream artists who are now working on their own IPs, they can lavish so much attention and so much detail into the work that me as a reader, I am perfectly happy getting 2 or 3 books from these creators a year. I'm fine paying 10 times what you pay for on the newsstand, as it were, but the quality of the work we're getting is it's just amazing. And you can't do this, you can't do the work that he's doing and that Graham Nolan is doing on that monthly grind schedule. So I think one of the wonderful things about the crowdfunding era is not just that these creators that I've loved forever are prospering and they've got their own IPs. The work we're getting as fans is just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And the timing too, it's interesting because Marvel's like basically killed the Punisher for good or whatever.
Oh my God.
And so he lives on just through Mike Baron, really, as the Private American and as others. Mike, you mentioned in when you first got the offer to write Punisher was like 1987. So it was a few years after Nexus. And in Nexus, when I read it, they're like, he's like a space vigilante. Is there any overlap between their characters, do you think? Or?
No, not really. They're two more different personalities you couldn't find. Nexus, Horatio Hellpop, grew up without any human contact except for his parents, and they were deeply troubled individuals. His mother died. She starved to death when she got lost in the caves, and his father was going to kill himself until Nexus spared him that chore. And his only companions were 2 artificial entities created by an insane alien. For people who don't know, Nexus is a reluctant executioner of mass murderers 500 years in the future. He's a bit of a poet. He's a bit of an introspect. Whereas the Punisher, Frank Castle, was a military guy. He volunteered. He fought in Vietnam. They probably updated that. Well, they should have updated it if they cared about the character. And he had a family that he loved. And the reason he became a vigilante is because organized criminals killed his family in Central Park, and that set him off. Anybody who's familiar with Don Pendleton's The Executioner will recognize that. But when I took it on, I approached it as a straight crime comic. And for 3 years, there were no superheroes, flying saucers, time travel, any of that stuff. He had a couple run-ins with the Kingpin and Doc Doom, but those are natural. They're human-sized predators, as was Daredevil. And it wasn't until I was 3 years into the run that I got a new editor who tried to integrate it more completely into the Marvel universe. But the Punisher is what he is. He's an American vigilante, a classic vigilante in the tradition of Wyatt Earp or Charles Bronson in Death Wish,
Yes.
or Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry. We have always loved our vigilantes, and they've been necessary because when we conquered the frontier, when civilization spread west, there was no law and order out there. The only law and order out there was what you brought with you. And they would create a town, and sometimes it wasn't until 20 or 30 years later that town would get around to appointing a sheriff or creating any kind of organized police force. And until that time, the vigilante held sway. Were there bad vigilantes? No doubt. A lot of bad vigilantes. If you want to see a movie about them, see the Oxbow incident.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a terrific overlooked Western. It's about a lynching. But I like the good vigilantes. You have, what was that? The Guardian Angels in New York, started by Curtis Sliwa. He started that group 30 years ago when they had another Democratic mayor who wasn't doing anything about crime in the streets, and crime in the subways just exploded. Well, today it's 10 times worse.
Yeah, I was wondering that because the legends about New York City in the 80s and early 90s is like, you could get mugged, you could get like just stabbed out of nowhere.
Get stabbed on the subway.
It
Yeah.
wasn't until Giuliani became mayor that he cracked down on that. And he used the broken glass principle. That means if you overlook a broken glass, a broken shop window, it sends a signal to criminals that you're willing to overlook bigger things.
That's a good
And
point.
if you catch a hoodlum jumping the turnstile on the subway, it might seem like that's a petty crime, but the point is that he's most likely later that day going to do something horrific, and
That's right.
and that it's 3 or 4% of the population that's doing 80-90% of the crime. So if you can nip those in the bud, if you can follow due process, you can get them off the streets, civilization can flourish. People feel safe.
And a little known fact, Giuliani shipped a lot of the problematic people down to Florida. So I grew up in Daytona Beach, so I've seen a lot of it.
Okay.
I think of Florida as America's dirty sock.
Oh, it is.
Where all the crazy
Speaking of
goes on.
Speaking of Florida, Mike, do you want to talk for a few minutes about your book series, Florida Man?
I'd love to. I don't choose my stories. My stories choose me. Every time I went online, there was a new Florida Man story. I saw 2 tonight, and I posted them on Facebook on our private Florida Man group. I'll put them on my regular feed too. And you know the stories. Florida Man claims syringe found in rectum is not his. Florida Man throws alligator through window at Arby's or whatever. And I thought, I got to write a story about this guy. But my protagonist, Gary Duba, he's a redneck living in a trailer down by the swamp. He's been in and out of trouble with the law his whole life, petty stuff, drunk and disorderly, failure to pay child support. He likes to get high. He likes to get stoned, but he's got a heart of gold, and he'd give you the shirt off his back. And that's the premise of the Florida Man novels. There are 3 out now. By far my most popular novels. The only purpose is to make you laugh, and you will laugh out loud multiple times. I got reviews from saying, I was reading this book in bed and my wife said I had to stop or she was going to leave because I was laughing out loud. She couldn't get to sleep. Another guy said, I had it on audiobook in my car. I had to pull over. I was laughing so hard.
Awesome. So, Mike, what I did was I have, obviously, you know, I've got the hard copies. This is issue number 2 of Nexus that I bought off the shelf at Schindler's in Minnesota in 1983. I have behind me my short box. I've got behind me my this is Nexus number 2. This was the first indie comic I ever bought. And funny story, when I was in back, this is before the internet. So kids like me, we get the Overstreet Guide. That was our reference book, right? And I'd be paging through the Overstreet Guide looking for comics, and I always saw Dr. Solar, Man of the Atom. And because he had the visor, because the covers were always painted, the first time I saw Nexus, I took a double take and I said, "Is that a reboot of Solar, Man of the Atom?" Now I had never read it, but looking at the painted covers by the dude and the visor, I thought maybe it was Dr. Solar. But I picked this up. And I'm gonna spoil the headline here. This was the first indie comic I bought, and what struck me was that the writing was better than anything in the mainstream in terms of like the ideas and the characterizations and the world building per page was better than anything coming from Marvel and DC. The artwork of Steve Rude, even on issue, this is the 5th issue, but the second color issue, head and above anything being done, even by say John Byrne at the time. The coloring, the paper, everything was
like,
every.
Wait, real quick. I was like, is this can't be like an independent comic because it's so good, but so
this opened the door.
Yeah, like what, Mike? How did you like meet Steve Rude? What were you doing when you started Nexus?
I was working at an insurance company.
Okay.
I got a call from an editor who said, there's some guy down here trying to sell us his art, and you should meet him. And he gave me the phone number. So I called the dude up, and I said, let's get together. And we met on the steps of the student union. He opened his portfolio right there on the ground. I'm looking at it. And right away, I gave up trying to draw. Well, I didn't really. For 20 years, I wrote my comics by drawing each page out by hand. But it's not professional art. It's good enough so that everybody can understand what's going on. I said, dude, what do you want to do? He said, I want to do comics, but I can't write. What do you want to do? Nice. And we were in the right place at the right time. Capital City Distribution, the second largest comic distributor in the world at the time, decided to publish their own line. So I brainstormed the first 12 pages of Nexus. I drew it all out by hand, my crude figures and all the dialogue and the captions and nothing else. And I gave it to the dude, and he went home. He penciled, inked, and lettered it. And we showed it to the boys, and they flipped through it and said, yeah, now we need 20 more pages.
Nice.
The rest is history.
So for Narwhal to have it on the screen, I had this via Comixology, the omnibus. So what I did was I did screen caps of the first 2 issues and gave it to Narwhal, but I included about 7 or 8 of the black and white pages from the first 3 issues. Because I think anyone who's interested in storytelling, anybody's interested in art, it is amazing to see what Mr. Rude does between that first issue and the 3rd issue of the black and white. That alone, he's making quantum leaps, not only in his art style, but in his storytelling skills. So this PDF that Narwhal has a few pages of the black and white series. And you can just see the first page. It looks like something you see at just any con where there's somebody who's like in high school or early college. They'll bring up their portfolio. It's what it looks like. It's that early artist style and that skill level. But then it just jumps. It just jumps from page to page here till you get to right on the precipice of the color series.
Like 1 year later or whatever, and then he's like become a master. Because I didn't even know I'm not super well versed in comics like from the past, so I didn't even know who Steve Rude was until like a year ago. And I read some Nexus because I know Mike, and then so I was like, oh, Nexus. So I bought it at the local store, start reading it, and I see their art. I'm like, this art's awesome. And I was like, Steve Rude. I'm like, is this guy considered one of the greatest all time? That was my question when I looked at the art. Cause like, this is so good. But it's so funny to like just be discovering him so late in the game, kind of.
Well, it's serendipitous too, because now you have something fresh. We're always looking for new talent. Somebody will knock us out.
Yeah.
And Steve's doing some Ashcan crowdfunders, and I back the Thune World Ashcan. So he's doing these crowdfunding campaigns as he's working on the next big book. And so those of you out there that are, if this is your first exposure, you can get some new work from him if you check out his website. And I think there might be another Kickstarter coming soon. But he's going through the iterations of the Ashcan until he gets the finished product, and it's a great opportunity to hop on and see some new work in addition to picking up some of these older reprints.
You bet.
Frisch Nitzel says there are ideas in Nexus that I have never seen expressed anywhere else in comics. Yeah, one of the things as I was reading it, I was like, oh, a big part of the world building in the story is like this system of heads being disembodied and then used for power. And it's sort of almost like an afterlife, like you could kind of die, but you're not quite dead yet. And that was awesome. And then I know, like, I'm like, Futurama should be paying you $1 million because they stole that idea. And that idea is like one of the best ideas.
So that floating head in the middle there, that bald guy, that's Raoul. Yeah. And in the world of Nexus, the premise is that if a head is removed the proper way, all of the mental abilities that run your body, all the electromagnetism, as it were, can do other amazing things. And one of them is to harness the power of a star and channel it to a telecaster, someone who can basically have these powers. But what's wonderful about Nexus and what Mike Barron did here and Steve Rude did is that over the course of Nexus, all these background characters take on a life of their own. And you're looking at this guy here, Raoul. He's just been liberated by Nexus. He is eventually going to become the leader of a world of these floating heads, right?
Head world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And instead of feeling sorry for themselves, these people they use their abilities and they basically create almost a utopia, because there's this. One of the themes in Mr. Barron's work is this rugged individualism, this entrepreneurialism. It's this Americana of I've been dealt a bad hand, but by golly, I'm going to make the best of it, and I'm going to come back twice as hard and twice as strong. And it's a Horatio Alger streak that's in his DNA. It's in the DNA of Nexus. So background characters like this, if you keep reading Nexus, they take on a life of their own. There's ongoing world building as the series has gone through 100 issues, obviously, and they're continuing to do it. But pay attention to the characters in the background, and And am I correct, Mike, that Steve just drew Tyrone, and you said that's a great looking character? I need to come up with a story for him. Is that true?
That is partially true for many of these characters. Dude would draw somebody in the background doing something, and it was so intriguing. I would bring them forward and give them some lines, and so they would work their way into the company.
Absolutely,
I have a
wonderful.
question. As someone who's new to comics, relatively new, if I wanted to dive into Nexus, like what's the best way to do it at this point? Now that it's been out, 40 years or so.
Well,
Yeah, is it
it's
one of the
always
newer
best if you
releases,
read them in sequence, but I design each issue to be a standalone story, entertaining in and of itself. So I'd say I don't think you can go wrong, really. You just dive in wherever you like. But the new book from Dark Horse, Nefarious, which is illustrated by Richard Bonk, is a real good story and a real good introduction to him. It's on Amazon. You can get your comic book store to order it. It's Nexus Nefarious from Dark Horse.
Good to know.
Cool. I got to read that one now that I've been
There it
getting
is.
Oh, you got it. Yeah. Comic book says Captain Nexus was lightning in a bottle. The rare convergence of a new writer and artist that not only knocked our socks off out of the gate, but who would go on to become legends, unprecedented. Yeah, that era was like kind of special, right? Like there was a lot of, that was the beginning of the kind of first indie, maybe the 70s, there was some indie stuff, but the indie superhero stuff. Were you catching that wave, Mike Barron? Did you notice like the indies doing a superhero indie book? Did that feel fresh at the time? Or
I knew there was a lot of great talent out there. I'm thinking of Grimjack and American Flag. There's both published by First Comics.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, there were amazing artists coming up through the majors. When I discovered Barry Windsor Smith's Conan, that blew my mind. And when Paul Gulacy took over Master of Kung Fu and Bernie Wrightson took over Swamp Thing, those three guys are just three of the giants of comic book illustration with unique, compelling styles that I still enjoy.
Yeah.
Also Steranko. I just saw Steranko a couple of weeks ago. He was in Denver, and we talked. It was great.
He's quoted at the back of Private American. He says, "Private American is important." It is. It is important. That's cool. You're friends with him. That's like legends hanging out. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you: is there any Star Trek influence in Nexus or no?
Well, on Dude's side, absolutely. He loves Star Trek, and he often would draw Spock and Kirk in the background.
Yeah, there's cameos.
Oh, that's funny. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's one of those treats of Nexus. Is there's so much going on Ilum that's Nexus's base of operations, and it's an abridged version of Asylum, and so the dude puts all kinds of life into the background. So there's all these great background characters, and you'll see cameos of Kirk and Spock standing in line in some queue to get food or something like that.
With
just a
knife,
treat.
In fact, that one famous.
Oh, that's right. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Abra, what did you think reading these as a new to comics? Did these just strike you as like fresh or interesting or different or anything?
Well, I didn't get the link from you, Narwhal, so I didn't get to read it.
Oh, really? Oops.
Yeah, but I did. I was able to go online and watch kind of like a summary of it, and it was really interesting. They kind of went page by page talking about the origins, and that's why I kind of asked. I asked Mike. I want to pick it up. I'd like to delve into it.
Okay,
so
that's awesome.
Dark Horse on Comixology, they do have omnibuses. And so if you got Comixology or Amazon, that might be a good way to read it from start to finish. And I that'd be my recommendation. Otherwise, obviously, bin diving and looking for back issues is always fun too.
Yeah.
Fritz says Nexus is just as thought-provoking and brilliantly illustrated as Watchmen and Miracle Man.
Agreed.
Only its thesis is vastly superior to Watchmen and Miracle Man. What does he mean by the thesis? Is it just the starting point, or like Nexus, his whole idea that he's
a thesis is a theory of how things work.
yeah.
And I don't know what he means by that, except that I've tried to present a coherent and realistic worldview. And if anything, it's a conservative worldview, which is a rarity these days. Nexus is a conservative figure. He always has been.
Yeah.
And he's someone who didn't choose his fate. His fate kind of got assigned to him, and he grapples with that.
Right.
And there's story arcs in Nexus where he's basically self-medicates, and he's in denial, and he abandons his role and so forth.
Right.
And so in terms of, and the other thing is that he inadvertently becomes a liberator. So this alien that Mike mentioned, he wants to deliver justice, and so he compels Nexus through these vivid dreams of mass murder, authoritarianism, concentration camps, torture. He makes Nexus experience these dreams where he lives the fate of those people who are victims, and so he's compelled. He has to. Is it every month or every couple months? It builds up, and he has to go out.
Well, it used to be regular, semi-regular, and it was driving him insane, which is the whole theory of the whole basis of his story and his legend, is that if he doesn't go out and eliminate the source of the dreams, this mass murderer or whoever, it will drive him insane, and he won't be able to live any longer. He was even thinking of killing himself because his father killed himself. And if you have a suicide in the family, it does affect you. But he made a deal with the Merc finally because he wanted to be more independent. That the Merc would funnel the energy to him in exchange for so many assassinations per annum or whatever.
Yeah.
And now the Merc, being insane, often lapses into catatonia. You don't know if he's there or not. The body's there, but there's no communicating with him. So Nexus, when that happens, he's got to deal with the heads. The heads can funnel that energy to him as well.
Cool. That's like the thesis a little bit. That's awesome. That's a cool starting point. The disembodied heads, all that stuff. It's really fun sci-fi, and then cool characters and adventure. Sorry, Abra, what were you going to say?
Well, I'm sorry. I was just going to interject. There was like this scene I saw where he was, laying out his judgment, but innocent people can't be harmed. Like if you're innocent, you're safe, but the guilty will, reap his wrath, so to speak. I thought that was kind of a cool addition as well.
Well, there was one assassination that he undertook. It's called the Old General, where he came to the realization that the general really was just following orders and hated what he was doing, but he did it anyway, and he had severe regrets over that one.
Mm-hmm. And so when Nexus will go and execute a totalitarian, a dictator, obviously there's all these people that see it happen, and they're suddenly liberated because their oppressor is gone. But he's in this unique situation where he's not trying to be a hero per se, but he's liberated all these people. So they call him the liberator. And then they're like, what are we going to do now? Can we come home with you? Sometimes he's like, sure, come on back. So that's how this kind of lonely, cold little planetoid slowly evolves into this flourishing hustle bustle society. And that's one of the subplots in Nexus, is not just that he's not intentionally building a society, but it's happening around. And he's sometimes at odds, because people will come to him and say, hey, great Nexus, help us out. And he's like, that's not why I'm doing this. I'm not a superhero per se. And so there's themes of duty. There's themes of what does the individual owe others and things like that. These themes are explored throughout the series.
Yeah. There's really cool world building it's like the web is like the Federation or whatever kind of thing, and Nexus operates kind of outside of that, and they're trying to reel them in. Which actually, that's a little bit of a overlap with like Private American or something, where you have like the big authority that is potentially corrupt, trying to reel in anyone with any kind of originality who's trying to actually do good.
I'd like to share some art from a Kelsey Shannon Nexus, which we're going to do later this year.
That'd be great.
I just posted a page on your Twitter message.
Oh
thing.
yeah, I'll pull it up. By the way, we got 60 people watching. We're
Awesome.
going to pause for a second after we look at this art and promote some comics, and then we'll get back to talking about Nexus.
One of the kind of quirks of when Nexus is to some extent a product of the Cold War era. And Mike, one of the plot points is that the Soviet Empire, in all its decrepitness, expands out into the universe. When the Soviet Union fell in 1991, again, setting a story in the future with the Soviets around, what was your take in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed?
Well, I thought, I may have been wrong about that, but as it turns out, the Soviets are gone, but the totalitarians remain. Right. So it would be just as well if they had kept on in that power, because Putin is just as bad, and they're doing the same things, you know.
And Nexus's father is a failed Soviet apparatchik.
That's true.
And the reason why he actually I won't give too much away, but they are refugees as a result of not only his own incompetence, but just the failure of socialism in general.
That's a very good analogy. But he was overwhelmed with guilt at what he'd done, and he never intended for the family to survive. When he sent the ship through a black hole, he thought that was the end of it, but it didn't. It spat him out through a white hole, and that's how they found Ilum.
Yeah.
So I am looking forward to this book with you and Kelsey. Is this the one that's based on the second novel, or is this a new story?
It's called Triplets, and the second novel is based on these scripts. The triplets are 3 kids who are born with perfect telepathic abilities among themselves. They can communicate instantly across interstellar distances. That's the only form of instant communication across interstellar distances. And they become very attractive to organized crime, who kidnaps them and sends the 3 children to 3 widely disparate planets, which each has a role to play in commerce, because the kids can transmit knowledge instantaneously to Earth, beating other forms of communication by months, years, and decades. And it affects the market, of course. You get a jump on the market if you know what's coming. And when the children are kidnapped, the parents go to Nexus and say, help us. So he sets out to track the children down and bring them home.
And is this going to be published by Dark Horse, like Nefarious?
It's going to be published by Big Comics, by Chris Brawley and I.
Okay.
Nefarious, Nefarious is out. Scourge will be published by Dark Horse, and Kelsey illustrated that one too. I wish I could show you some art from that. It's just mind-blowing.
He's great.
Yeah, that's a great team up. Was he excited to work on such a classic character?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's knocked himself out. It's the best work of his career.
I was almost thinking that too when I saw his art. I'm like, it looks so good. He's got the color palette is amazing too. And that's something I noticed from the original art. Like, who colored that? Did Steve Rude color it too, or?
No, Les Dorscheid colored most of those pages, but Kelsey is coloring himself here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And Les would use. Did he use animation pigments when he colored Nexus?
You'd have to ask him.
Okay.
Yeah, it looked like it was painted, like either markers or watercolors or something. They have really cool kind of colors going on.
It's possible, boys. I only meant to drop in for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, this is perfect. But we got to ask you almost everything we wanted to.
Great.
Yeah.
It was such a great surprise. It's so nice to get to meet you, Mike.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And yeah, behind the scenes before we went live, I maybe should have done it live, but it was so fun because it was a big surprise. Everyone was like, Mike Barron, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So,
all right, I'm going to bail. You guys carry on.
Thank
Take
you,
it easy,
sir.
Mike.
We'll see you later. Yeah, so everyone, Bronze Star is live right now, and also Jupiter issue 1, which this is behind the scenes. Mike Barron did shout out Jupiter too, so I can remember what he said. He said it was super
a great story. Yeah,
great
original story.
Yeah, I sent him the press proof a couple months back, just in the hopes that it would either make him smile or he'd give me some feedback. And God bless him, he called me at work. and gave me some pointers. So I had the thrill. It was the January, February. I had the thrill of sitting there at work in my office with the scratch paper and writing down all the feedback that Mike Baron was giving me about this here Jupiter. So this is my first book, and I'm delighted that it hit. It's almost at $8,400 on Indiegogo. I'm a new creator. A lot of people don't know who I am, so I'm just honored and thrilled by the reception that I've had. So this is Jupiter's 40 pages full color for $13. It's all original. It has a flip cover on the back, so if you want a variant cover, you don't have to pay twice. You get 2 covers in one book. And I am currently working on color corrections on the last page. So I expect I'll be going to my printer tomorrow to give them new files, do a press proof. The book is in demand on Indiegogo, and I'm going to be getting it printed probably next couple of weeks. So if you back Jupiter, you should be getting it in your hands sometime after 4th of July, sometime in mid-July. So please take a look at it and check out the trailer. But I had a tremendous amount of fun doing this book. This is it's a mix of superheroism and surrealism and a little bit of social commentary. It's not preachy, but my goal is to get you to think without telling you what to think. So please take a look at Jupiter when time allows, and I hope you back it.
Yeah, and that is interesting. You have done a great first marketing and selling yourself for a first release. And one of the things you did was you did mail out a bunch of proof copies, had everything ready to go before it even launches, and you mailed one to me and to Mike Baron, and then trying to schedule ahead of time, going on streams and promoting. And it definitely, it helps get the work out there and everyone get the ball rolling. You can see it's got the 2 art styles, like a story within a story kind of thing. It's definitely really pretty fun and original, like Mike Baron said. And it has some history in the 90s. It like existed as an indie comic, and this is sort of a relaunch of it, right?
Yeah. So Jupiter ran for 9 issues in the late 90s as a critically acclaimed, poorly marketed black and white indie. It was distributed through Diamond, ran 9 issues, but I couldn't move the needle. The sales never went down. Everybody who read Jupiter in the 90s kept ordering it, but I couldn't break through to additional stores or additional readers. So I had to kind of do a gut check, and it was kind of a painful decision, but I hit pause on it because I'm like, hey, I'm in my late 20s here. I got to get my life going. So I focused on other kinds of artwork, painting and children's books and so forth. And, coming across Ethan Van Sciver and the crowdfunding revolution, I realized that crowdfunding is more direct than the direct market. So, and I love doing this. So I basically brought it back as a title. You don't have to have read the 90s Jupiter to appreciate this new series. It's all brand new material. It's full color. But yeah, definitely I call myself lucky that this crowdfunding revolution, not only is it as a reader, am I getting these great books by Ethan and Graham Nolan and so forth, but I'm able to reinvigorate my own creative endeavor and share it with the world. So very exciting times as a creator and as a reader.
Yeah. Real quick, I was going to say with that Taylor Sheridan thing, I looked for the tweet and I couldn't find it, but I just remembered what it was. And it was someone commenting, he got so much hate, almost too much. I'm like, oh, but one of them said like, he needs those extra people, to get the authentic experiences, to get the story ideas. Cause he said writing is easy, but getting story ideas is hard. And I was like, it's literally the opposite. Getting story ideas is easy, but writing is hard, I think. So I don't know. It's like, it's an upside down world kind of. And it does mean like we're in a situation where like TV and movies right now are not the greatest. Everyone kind of knows that. You hear Tarantino say something, Scorsese will say something. And then they always get pushback too. And right in the middle of it is like this writer's strike is happening. That's like only going to make it worse. And they're all real sensitive. And of course they probably don't like it if you say, well, modern TV sucks. Like, so what does that have to do with you guys? Meanwhile, you want to be paid more or whatever. So indies.
Yeah. And modern television, it had a bit of a golden era a few years ago, but it's basically created these huge canvases, right? Of like a streaming series with 10 episodes. It's this huge canvas, but now you've got people who don't have anything to say. And they haven't had any life experience. They haven't done anything. And yet they're overeducated and they're just sitting around kind of retelling the same stories or trying to take a story that should be 2 hours or 3 hours and stretching out into 10 hours, 10 1-hour episodes. It's I basically at this point I listen to music and I watch live streams like this. I don't watch any scripted television.
Yeah, me too. It's hard to find anything, and then it's a lot of time, and it's not that great. With movies, a lot of times I find myself going just back older and older, just watching in reverse, kind of like I've watched every movie in the 90s. I'm watching the 80s now, then the 70s.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I watched Commando. Commando is on Amazon Prime. I watched Commando the other day, just as I was doing some artwork and stuff like that. It's much better than any scripted television show out there right
well,
now.
those movies were fun. I mean,
Yeah,
the stuff
exactly.
today is just like a slog to get through it. They're not fun today. Really frustrating.
Yep,
Yeah,
agreed.
when I read Private American, I was like, this could be like a Stallone movie in the 80s or something.
Totally.
Like, it made me want to watch Cobra, because that one is written by Stallone, and apparently it's really good, but I actually haven't seen it yet. But that's like one of these kind of famous sort of lesser known.
Cobra
actors.
is
that
good.
the one where he
Yeah.
cuts the pizza with the scissors?
Yes. It is. Gross. It's so gross. Yeah, I
That's
just
funny.
watched that one again the other day.
Oh,
Awesome.
nice. Yeah, I want to watch it. Yeah, kind of when Comicsgate started, a lot of what we were saying is like, we're not political, they are, and I still kind of feel that, but I've changed my tune just a little bit, because I'm like, you get accused of being political just for not being political. But for example, there's a line in Private American where they're talking and a guy's like, yeah, a lot of policemen lost their jobs because they wouldn't get the jab. And I'm like, see, that gets called political, but that all that is true and based. And yeah, that's part of the story. So it's like good writing. So but the fact that Private American like does document that happened, because a lot of people are scared. Like, you don't want to be scared. Oh shit, they'll call me political, so I can't talk about the jab. It might date my comic, whatever. Like, I'm really glad that Private American included that. And I was thinking that in my own work is like, it is kind of cool to have like, you want to make something kind of contemporary. It's okay if it gets slightly dated, as long as it's true. If it's dated in the way like, oh, you were just drinking the Kool-Aid in 2020, so like then we can date it that way. Like, oh, you were brainwashed 2020 style, not brainwashed 2030 style. So you're always kind of trying as a writer to get like based. And Mike Barron definitely is based, and Jupiter is based too. But like you're saying, it makes people think, but not what to think or whatever.
I draw a distinction between the political and the polemic. And what I mean by that is that the oldest stories in Western civilization, Antigone, right? The play Antigone, that is basically the premise of that play is that the state cannot make a law that supersedes God's law, right? That's basically the background of Antigone. That's a highly political idea, right? So even the oldest art and the greatest art is political to the extent that it will discuss matters of power. It'll discuss what does the individual owe the state? What does the individual owe the individual? What's a right or a just use of power? That's politics. That's political. But what's happened is that these people on the far left and far right, they're engaging in polemic, which is in the guise of a story. They're basically writing a stupid pamphlet to try to cast an ad hominem attack on their opponents, or to make you prematurely disengage or not entertain a competing theory. So that's polemics. And when people nowadays say, hey, this book is too political or this show is too political, I think what they usually mean is that story is a polemic. They just don't know that it's a polemic versus a political thing. I mean, you can look at Shakespeare. There's matters of politics and matters of philosophy discussed in Shakespeare, but it's not a polemic the way we're seeing what's kind of taking over the culture now. So never hesitate to explore a political idea, but do it justice.
Yeah, I agree. Storm D says it's not political, it's universal. Being forced to take something or get punished for it is timeless. Yeah. That gets like, I do wonder, like, if things getting dated, on one hand, it's not even that bad if it's true. And you're like, well, it almost doesn't get dated if it's true. And that can go back to like Shakespeare or whatever, or politics. Politics have always existed, always been kind of the same.
Timeless.
Questions of, freedom and control and stuff like that. And then it is, I think we've all kind of thought that word pamphlet, it comes up all the time when you read the SJW stuff, even now. But it's funny that they switch, good guys and bad guys, even like they'll write their polemic of a bad guy. And like they did the one where it was like red skull or whatever. And he's like talking like Jordan Peterson.
Yep.
And
Cleaner
you're
leg.
like, he doesn't even sound that bad. He sounds like he's the good guy kind of.
Pale lobster.
Yeah.
Eurasia has always been at war with Oceania. Oceania has always been at war with Eurasia. like they do these things, and they paint themselves in these corners, and time makes everything. Time shows who's full of it and who's being honest and so forth.
Yeah. You know, your boy Zach, I think today he released his longest video in a while. It's like 35 minutes. And I didn't finish it because it was too cringy. So it's funny because it's probably a great video. But it was all about like this, you know, Pride version of what Gwenpool or whatever, where because I didn't realize she's meta like Deadpool or whatever. So
Yeah.
she knows she's a comic and she decides she wants to be a romance comic. And then she ends up, of course, like disparaging man-woman relationships, and she gets into a lesbian relationship and blah, blah, blah. But it's like super polemic. That's a good way to put it, where it is very like pamphlet-y, and like you're like, well, this is just weird. Like this is like, what even is this?
Who's it for?
Yeah,
them and their little wine circles, you know.
All right. But you know what's not a polemic? Nexus. Nexus
Yes.
is good comics. So one of the interesting things in this first issue is that Nexus goes from Ilum to the web, to Earth, to do some stuff, and then simultaneously an agent of the web, Ursula, goes to Ilum, and they're kind of their paths cross in outer space. They don't even know it. And while Nexus is at this restaurant, he encounters this other vigilante, and this guy with the mohawk. It's a great character design. This is Judah Maccabee the Hammer. And the Thunes are these walking, talking apes. And there's a place called Thune World. So Judah Maccabee, he's the Thune, and Nexus is trying to have a quiet dinner with Sandra Peel. And sure enough, this vigilante comes in here to take out a bad guy. So Nexus is obviously like, what is going on? How is this guy doing this? Great character design.
Yeah, this art and this coloring, like there is like this dark gray with this rich red right here. If you guys see my mouse,
Yep.
That's the same value but a different hue, and that's a cool thing that only color comics can do. If you made this black and white, that would look like one flat thing.
Yep.
So that's something to keep in mind with coloring. You can do these real subtle things that don't even change the value, and it can look really nice. And I've noticed that a fair amount in this with this colorist.
He reminds me of Bebop from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, those glasses and the mohawk and everything.
Yeah. And he's got the fist on his chest. That's like an 80s thing. Like he's just asking to be a toy.
BLM kind of borrowed from that, huh?
Yeah. That design too. It's Star Fox has a lot of designs. That
Yes.
And I'm like, did they take a page out of Steve Rude's book?
So not only does he have the visor like Nexus, but you can see he can do the telecasting of the fusion power and shoot these bolts out of his right there. He's revving up to use his power. Nexus reaches through and says, "Hold on, chill out. What's going on here?"
Yeah. I want to find a panel too where there's a close up, and I'm like, suddenly it gets like photorealistic. And I was like, man, Steve Rude, so good. Have you guys noticed how many panels each page is too? Like, so I read Private American, and it's like averages 5 panels a page. That's kind of what modern comics do. All Mark Millar's books are like that. But these old books, they average like 8 panels a page, almost. Like 7 is like even low almost, but 7 minimum, 8, 9, 10. I've seen a lot with 11, 10 and 11. And I kind of think it's cool. But
so I think because Mike was working with Steve Rude, who's a natural storyteller, Mike only had to basically write the dialogue. So he let Steve set the tone. He let Steve Rude set the setting, and so he didn't have to do too much additional caption boxes and things like that. So typically Nexus is a pretty breezy read. And then when there are situations where they've got to do a lot of world building, and there's, basically when you got the talking head situation, notice here, Steve is changing the camera angles and adding dynamic camera angles and so forth. It never feels like a Brian Michael Bendis comic where you've got these talking heads for 3 or 4 pages that are just going over exposition.
Did they copy paste stuff or whatever? Yeah.
Nope, you roboed there for a second.
It'll take a second.
Okay, he'll catch up.
Yeah. Houston.
Am I back? Tell me when
You're
I'm
back.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Yeah. I was saying with the Brian Michael Bendis stuff, and then who's the guy who's writing Batman right now is just the worst, the CIA guy or whatever.
Oh God, yeah.
Tom
Taylor.
Yeah. They have
Tom
these
King.
pages.
Yeah.
They have these pages that are like they're.
Oh no.
Emergency.
Into the black hole. Now that we've taken over Narwhal's channel, what grievances do you want to air, Abra?
Well, missing links, that kind of thing. I was hoping I'd get Nexus, but that never happened.
So the book, when I scanned it, it was so big that I wasn't even sure if you were going to be on the show. So I just sent it to him. I regret he didn't forward it to you. But I do recommend if you go on Comixology or even Amazon and you've got a Kindle or whatever, the first omnibus, it's not that
CIA and then they cut me.
Yeah, he did it.
Tom King hurt
Tom's
his ears
there
perked
with
up.
his finger on it.
Tom, put your mask on. King just heard about you and shut you down.
Yeah,
but I'm definitely going to go on Amazon. I'm going to see about getting that hardcover. You were saying Nefarious, Nexus Nefarious is pretty.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I really want to read that too.
Yeah. So this
Abra, I don't know if I should have double checked or whatever because I forwarded you, but then I forgot to double check to make sure
it's all good. Yeah, I plan on going back, retroactively and picking that up. So it's all good.
Cool, because I think the Ford didn't include the attachment is the problem. But yeah, I'm going to reshare so we can look at some more. But yeah, we're almost at an hour, so we can kind of start doing final thoughts or talking more about Nexus and whatever. But what did you, Jason? You're kind of the expert. Did you want to?
So there's in issue 2, I want to look at. There's a fight scene in issue 2, which is just amazing fight choreography. It's between Sandra and Ursula. If you want to jump ahead, it's when Ursula goes into there we go. So you go up. So this is basically Steve Rude's 5th comic book. This is the 2nd issue of Nexus. Just look at this fight choreography here. It's amazing. It's just amazing. And this is 1983. So I challenge you to go into the bins, find some comics from 1983, lay them next to this, and see if you get anywhere near this caliber of art or this storytelling, this fight choreography. It's just amazing.
Jolly Green says, "Are your guests involved in Nexus?" Just that Sandberg is like an expert because he owns the entire series, and so we've been getting the download from him, which is awesome.
It was the first indie comic I ever bought. Issue 2, I was just blown away. And I've had the great fortune of talking to Mike Barron on the phone about my book. So just a huge fan.
Yeah. I noticed. So this panel, I love this panel. And it's funny because, this is 1/9 of the page. And that is just like comics used to be like that. They aren't really like that anymore. Like you would, I guess, make it more pages, but it's kind of fun. It's like this super awesome panel and it's just tiny.
And another thing is because Nexus is reliant on the Merc for his powers, there's situations where you put in jeopardy, right? Where like Mike said, the Merc goes on the fritz, or he's in a solar system where he's too far from the Merc and so forth. So as great as Nexus's powers are, there are stories where he doesn't have his power, has to survive by his wits and so forth.
Oh yeah, cool. That's awesome too. Yeah, the other thing that's interesting is seeing people in the chat mentioning like, oh yeah, like Nexus is one of the best ever. So like Schneily was comparing it to Watchmen and some of the other legendary Miracle Man and stuff like that. So it's cool. It's cool that Mike Barron's hanging with us.
What happened was in like the second half of the 80s, people were taking notice of Steve Rude's work. So he was getting these kind of short stints at Marvel and DC. Some things to go hunt down is the Mr. Miracle one shot that he did. He did a Mr. Miracle one shot. So he would leave Nexus for 2 or 3 months. Mike would bring in like Rick Veitch, Jose Lucia Lopez, and Keith Giffen to do fill-in issues on Nexus. So even when Steve Rude wasn't there, you had these great talents coming in doing, standalone issues of Nexus. But so Steve Rude would periodically get pulled away to the mainstream for he'd kind of like get to play with those characters that he loved. He did a Space Ghost one shot. It's fantastic. So he would flip back and forth, and it was really it was in the early 90s where I think he was getting pulled too much into the mainstream titles. I don't think they fully appreciated it as much as they should have. And then Nexus became more sporadic. The other thing that I think was happening is that what you're looking at right here, this is 1983. So it's peak Bronze Age. This is far and above and way more modern than any Bronze Age comic. However, in the late 80s, you begin to see McFarlane and the L Boys, Liefeld, Lee, and Larson, where they're emphasizing the inking and the noodling and the cross hatching and all that kind of stuff, which has its place, which is wonderful. But that McFarlane madness kind of took over the readership, right? Where I think people weren't appreciating the core draftsmanship of what Steve Rude was doing. And so while he was never without work, I think the fact that you hadn't heard about him until about a year ago is just because there was this shift in taste that happened around the Image era. And as much as I love some of the Image books, that Image kind of art style, it's at odds with this kind of classic draftsmanship and some of the storytelling, right? Because none of this is like pinup work, right? It's all actual storytelling, and there's some beautiful splash pages. But I think that's part of what kind of made him downshift in terms of his exposure was just that the Image stuff kind of took over the world, right?
Yeah.
I love the colors. The colors, I'm just drinking it in. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And it was printed on printed on Baxter paper. So so not only did they had a larger color palette than the Bronze Age 64 color palette, they had better paper. And so Les Dorchiad, he's the colorist. I think he colored animation cells. I think he used those same inks or paints or pigments to color Nexus. I'm pretty sure. There's Muttman.
Yeah, Rude was too good for his time. History will hold Nexus in high regard. Yeah, do you see this green and this blue? That's another one where it's the same value, but a different hue. And that looks like those colors are something that Kelsey Shannon is like carrying on that kind of stuff. But yeah, it looks amazing. And Jason, you could obviously talk more. So what we might do, we'll see what we're going to do for the next meeting. And this might be a monthly show is what we're thinking. So, Abra, we want you on, and I'll send you the correct.
I could be a little bit better prepared rather than having to watch the cartoonist kayfabe version.
Yeah. And I've got a list going of ideas to run by you two because I've got 10 short boxes of my favorite comics. I'm sure you all have books that you would love to show me and look at, but I've got a list going here. So we've got no shortage of fantastic books that haven't gotten the attention they deserve. So it's gonna be a wonderful show to do once a month.
I have Mutt from the audience, Jason, was asking what other comics were printed on Baxter.
So at this time, I think the only other comic books in this era that were Baxter would be the Legion of Superheroes reprint book and the Teen Titans reprint book. Those were the direct mail only comic books that the DC was putting out. And then these first issues were published by Capital. So Capital's other two titles were The Badger and Whisper. Whisper was a ninja book. I think it ran like 4 or 5 issues. The Badger was also by Mike Barron, had different artists working on it. That was also on Baxter paper. And then American Flag and Zot. Zot is another fantastic book. It's got a special place in my heart. That was around 1984, 1985. That was also on Baxter paper as well.
Cool.
Sweet.
Here's where the close up where I was like, oh damn, that's like photorealistic, like the
Oh, wow,
nose
yeah.
anatomy and lip anatomy and stuff.
And follow Mike Barron on follow Steve Root on Twitter, because he every day he's throwing up his own artwork. He's throwing up options, and on his YouTube channel you can watch him paint and things like that. He does sketchbooks. You can like once a year he'll publish a sketchbook for all the sketches he did that year. He's just a wonderful person to follow and support.
Yeah,
there you go.
He did a painting for Private American, and it's amazing. And yeah, I forget where I read it. It was in one of the Nexus books, but he and Mike Barron, they're still friends, because that was a little point of tension when I first got into Nexus. I saw Steve Root's art, and I'm like, please tell me they're still friends. Please tell me they're still friends.
You never know these days.
Yeah, and they are, which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I think they're both creative forces of nature, and so that book. Let me hold this up. Oh.
Don't strain yourself.
Yeah, I know. So this is the last Nexus that they did together. This came out about 5 years ago. It's Nexus as a newspaper strip size. I'm not going to open this up because I'll drop it and break it. But this is my prized possession. So this came out about 5 years ago. Mike Barron has done a Nexus novel. He's working on one-shots with Richard Bonk and Kelsey Shannon. And then Steve Root currently is running through a series of Kickstarters for the ash cans. For his next Nexus project is going to be Nexus, the War for Thune World. So Thune World is that planet with the apes, like Judah Maccabee and Dave, the bicycle mechanic. He's making a big book that's, I think, going to be this size. That's an OGN. So to fund that, he's periodically publishing ash cans of everything he's done so far. So go check out that. I think there's one coming soon, but eventually that Thune World story will be published full color, hardcover, all that. So certainly follow both of them on Twitter and check out what they're doing. They're fantastic national treasures, very, very critical, I think, to indie comics and certainly this corner of the culture that we're all excited about here.
Cool. Abra, do you have anything you want to promote? Your YouTube channel, obviously, everyone sub Abra's 2 cents on YouTube.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any videos in the work?
Yes, actually, I a couple things here going on. I was gonna. It's green, and I have a green screen, so it's not working very well.
But, that's
yeah.
funny.
I have the Cyber Frog figures. I wonder if I could turn off my green screen real quick here, but. Yeah, that's going to be my next review here. Nice. I've been having fun playing with those. I haven't played with toys in such a long time. It's kind of silly.
They turned out awesome. They look great.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
My Cyber Frog is hiding up there in the corner there, but yeah. He's
I can
keeping an eye on things up there.
Yeah.
Nice. And then obviously Jupiter. And for me, it's just in 2 to 3 weeks. The new Earthbound will launch, so keep your eye out. But it's not. I'm not doing anything right. I'm in between right now. I'm fulfilling Cerberus in about 1 week, launching Earthbound as soon as that ends. So I'm just kind of working on that kind of stuff, getting everything ready. I like the in between. So little of my life is that anymore. Like usually it's one thing after the other, but the period right when you finish a campaign before you launch another one. And before you have to fulfill, so you're waiting for the prints to get mailed to you. There's like this 3-week period where you can work on whatever you want. And
go on a vacation real quick.
yeah, that would be the time to do it if you do it. I've kind of been writing just random stuff that doesn't even need to be like a comic, writing more for fun than for like trying to keep the train tracks going while you're on the train is like what indie comics is. So it
keeps your skills sharp too, I'm sure.
Yeah, and you're always exploring like just things will come up randomly where you're like, oh, that could be expanded on later, or you let things sit, you look at them a year later and you're like, oh, I actually kind of like that. So cool. Jason, what about you? Obviously Jupiter, the link is in the chat or in the description.
Yeah.
And chat, feel free to post the link, any mods or anything.
So yeah, Jupiter's in demand on Indiegogo. We're over 200 backers. I'll be putting on Fund My Comic in the next couple days or so. And right now I'm working on the last color corrections on the last page. I'm going to go meet my printer tomorrow, get a new hardcover, hard copy paginated proof, and then I'll be putting in the print order. So if you back Jupiter, you should be getting it sometime in mid-July. I'm very excited to get this out to people and then begin working on the further on the next issue. So please, take a look, check it out. It's got
Can you show that cover again? I love that flip
Yeah.
alternate cover. That was
so
really
people like variant covers.
yeah.
I'm not gonna make it pay twice for a variant cover. So Jupiter has its own variant cover, flip cover. So on the front is basically my main character in the real world right here. In Jupiter, there's no superheroes except for the ones that exist in the comic books in that world. And so on the flip side is Captain Kleinbottle. He's the Jack Kirby. Basically, her universe is Jack Kirby. Is like a Walt Disney character where he flourished and he's kind of world famous and so forth. Didn't have to work for Marvel and DC. This is his character, Captain Kleinbottle. So she reads to escape. She reads Captain Kleinbottle comic books, and this is what the cover would look like in that world. So I get to do my style, Jack Kirby style, have a lot of fun. So if you love Silver Bronze Age comics and you like modern comics, check out Jupiter.
It's clever.
Cool. Yeah, it looks great. And yeah, this just came up with the old art from Mike Barron. So with that, I think we'll end the stream here. I guess eventually we'll probably have like some outros and intros, but my brand partially is just awkwardly clicking it and then waiting for them. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to click it. So everyone, thanks for being here. Guests, thank you so much. We're going to do it again. And chat, thanks for being here. We had 60 watching for a lot of that hour.
Nice.
So thank you,
Awesome.
everyone. And yeah, talking about Nexus, it's really fun discovering this like classic legendary comic and then realizing like Jason was starstruck by Mike Barron. And I was
too.
Yeah, when I first met Mike, I wasn't because I didn't know who he was, but now I know who he was, so I'm getting like posthumously starstruck.
Yeah.
Guys, I bought this 40 years ago. I was a kid.
It looks brand new.
I know. So yeah, I mean, yeah, this was So Narwhal, Abra, was fantastic hanging out with you. Narwhal, I will be forever in your debt. You got me on a live stream with Mike Barron. I can now die a happy man. Thank you for everything.
Cool. Yeah, thanks everyone. Okay, we're gonna end it